We're so blessed, Laura Lee, with your talent. Thank you for a beautiful piece. Good morning, all. I have to give credit for this topic when it was first brought to my attention by our own Sue LeClaire when she expressed her concern about the Jason Cove Project. And then to David, my neighbor, who wanted me to meet his friends and to share their activism and how they walk the talk and live the talk, all of them living sustainably, farming in their community in Elmira. I believe you also live there. And what role models they are. I have enough challenge sustaining a greenhouse. And I've had the benefit of enjoying the produce fresh from their farms. So it's my pleasure to introduce Patty Hine and Debbie McGee today. Debbie McGee has a background as a career mental health professional, school counselor, therapist, now turned radical farmer activist. Patty Hine, retired Navy officer, college faculty, faith community, social justice organizer, and Deb's wife. Together they started the 350 chapter in Eugene, Oregon in January of 2014 with other climate activists to build a grassroots movement to solve the climate crisis and address its causes like capitalism. Today they will share a new short Millennial video describing the proposed 232-mile fracked-gas pipeline across southern Oregon and its partner, the Liquified Natural Gas Terminal Project, planned for the tsunami earthquake zone on a sand spit in Coos Bay. A short presentation will include riverkeeper analysis of the project, where these projects are in the federal and state regulatory process, and why and how Oregonians must stop them. Deb and Patty continue to actively share the message that the climate crisis is here and that we need a rapid transition to a clean energy economy now. We must leave fossil fuels in the ground and stop dirty energy infrastructure projects in their tracks. The people are rising. Please welcome Patty and Deb.
Is this the television, Walt?
Yes, it should be on.
The television's on? All we have to do is...
Not. Let me turn it on.
Okay, thank you.
I was trying to do all that.
Okay, no problem. Okay, stand by. We'll just do a little, let's see if we can hear this. That would be the first thing we want to do.
Yep, about a pipeline project that was going to run through his backyard called the Pacific Connector Pipeline.
We're just going to get the...
Volume good? Yeah.
We would like to see it in full view, of course, which might be one of... There it is. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to play that in just a minute. I want to let you know how honored we are to be here among the Unitarians. We're from Eugene, live outside town, but we hang out with the Unitarians all the time there in Eugene. And we are so at home, and we even know your songs. So we are United Methodists by birth. That is why we have so much in common and why our moral tradition brings us to this kind of work together. And we're just delighted to be here with you to share a really local story that we think you'll be very interested in. So who knows what year that has passed was the hottest on record? Did I hear you say last year? Correct. That's ended. 2014 was the hottest year on record. And what year is stacking up to be the hottest this year? Right, thank you. So in March, it was the first month in recorded history where every single day the parts per million of carbon dioxide exceeded 400 parts per million. 350 parts per million is the number of parts per million of carbon dioxide that we were all born into on planet Earth, or below. It was 275 before the Industrial Revolution. So the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere are what are creating this blanket that is around our fabulous, one-of-a-kind, beautiful planet. That is why the heat is being captured we continue to burn fossils that were really never meant to be dug out of the ground in the first place. That's why they're down there, they're poison. So this is a little background about that. This is a little background next about a very fabulous 7-minute video that a Millennial from California created, when he heard about this project. So I warn you, it's spoken quickly, like a Millennial would speak. So that is why we have the volume turned up very high, because it takes a while. I wish there were subtitles. Jennifer, that would have been great. So it is, and then we'll talk about the presentation really from the riverkeeper's point of view, why it's not a good idea, as if anybody needed to be told that you wouldn't put a natural gas terminal where you would liquefy 14-story tanks and drive off with them in boats in a tsunami zone and an earthquake zone. So more on that in just a few minutes. Full screen.
Drag it over.
Drag it.
There you go.
Like so? Drag it like so? I wish I would have thought of that. Okay, here we go.
That's me, James, recovering apathetic millennial, admittedly complacent to most of the issues facing our world. And that's my friend Ron, he's from Oregon. One day Ron called me up about a pipeline project that was going to run through his backyard called the Pacific Connector Pipeline. Ron said it was a big deal because he felt his property rights had been infringed and that it was an unjust use of eminent domain. Topical, political, probably an excellent course in apathy recovery, so I was interested. I called up my friend Matt, we hopped on a plane, and started to dig in. Our journey began understanding the basics. Ron shared that the Pacific Connector Pipeline will begin near the California-Oregon border, where it will meet up with an existing pipeline bringing in fracked natural gas from the Rockies. From there, the 36-inch pipeline will run 230 miles through a combination of private property and public lands to the first ever West Coast liquefied natural gas export facility. That facility in Coos Bay, Oregon, will receive between 1.1 and 1.6 billion cubic feet of gas per day, liquefied and sent via ship to be sold in foreign markets. Altogether, known as the Jason Cove Project. At first glance, seems like not too bad a deal. About 150 permanent jobs, a big investment in Oregon's infrastructure, and growth in the local economy. At least that's what this industry-sponsored group is saying.
Our region is hurting. A Pacific Connector Pipeline can boost our economy.
It's our turn for jobs.
It's our turn for better schools.
It's our turn for a brighter future.
Jobs, schools, brighter future, sounds great. So why the opposition, more specifically the outrage? Well, one quick search in the headlines let in. Bad for our economy, destructive to the environment, risk to public safety, and back to my friend Ron's concern, infringement on personal property rights. It gets confusing fast. Support for the project seems to be based in the economics, so that's where we started to dig deeper. First, the issue of export. It does seem counterintuitive to the pervasive ideology of energy independence.
Americans will not have to rely on any source of energy beyond our own.
Not to mention that science and common sense has told us that rule number one about fossil fuels is that they're finite. Save them, use them wisely. So why the shift? Why now is it okay to export our finite natural gas? Well, the gas companies say we have an oversupply and that export will be a driver for the U.S. economy. In fact, the Department of Energy has opened up the floodgates to hydraulic fracturing, more contentiously known as fracking, to dry this stuff up. As of 2013, there were 487,286 natural gas wells in the U.S., which is one for every 6.5 square miles of the lower 48. The price for 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas in the U.S. is around $2.80. The price for 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas in Asia is over $12. So it's clear why the industry is pushing towards export and an equalization in price. But what about the economic downsides for the U.S.? The side effects of LNG export, as documented by the U.S. Energy Information Administration, could increase domestic gas prices anywhere from 10% to upwards of 20%. So opposition to export isn't just coming from the obvious sources like environmentalists on the far left, but major U.S. industry like Dow Chemical and Alcoa. In a company statement addressing Jordan Cove, Dow said U.S. manufacturers are putting Americans back to work and creating high-paying jobs due to this new abundance of affordable natural gas. This is vastly preferable to sending our energy resources overseas and jobs overseas. It's also worth noting the majority stakeholder in the Jordan Cove Energy Project is a company called Veresen, which is Canadian. So a Canadian company, which no doubt will make significant profits and benefit its shareholders, is exporting U.S. gas, potentially raising U.S. gas prices, and doing so under the umbrella of eminent domain. Our next stop was with Ron's friend Stacy, who with her husband purchased 357 acres in Myrtle Creek, Oregon 10 years ago. They rehabilitated the land, removing trash heaps, restoring diversity, and planting over 10,000 trees, the manifestation of the American dream.
So these are the 2 points here. It goes a mile across our land. It cuts our place in half. Look how beautiful that is. Look at the tree behind it, the oak. This is gone. Once that pipeline goes in here, none of this exists anymore. There's so many magical, special places. It's just sacred. How does it make me feel? It makes me feel very angry that the government and that these corporations have the right to come in and take our property, that they have the right to destroy our land when we say no.
Stacy's not the only one who's prepared to fight for her property. Out of over 300 impacted landowners, the majority have yet to sign a lease, meaning eminent domain is likely. This is completely legal under Section 7 of the Natural Gas Act, as long as the project is deemed to be in the public benefit. So the question becomes, how can a project like this be deemed to be in the public benefit? What about concerns over environment? Simply put, they are significant. Not only are there concerns regarding the clear-cutting full-growth forest, intrusion onto publicly owned BLM land, and risk to over 400 critical waterways, but there's an introduction to the risk of pipeline failure. Not only is this a public health and safety concern, but it exposes a severely dry southern Cascadia region to the risk of large-scale fire and ecosystem destruction. Some say these concerns are hyperbole, but examples of pipeline failure are hard to ignore, especially when the Williams Company, who's overseeing this particular pipeline's construction, has had 9 significant spills, leaks, or ruptures in the recent past. It's also a known fact that all pipelines leak, especially 230-mile-long pipelines, and that methane, which is a key component of natural gas, is 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. But most surprising of all, the power plant facility which will supply the energy needed to convert the gas into LNG will eventually become the most polluting plant in the state of Oregon. So it's proposed to build Oregon's biggest emitter of greenhouse gas in our modern context of climate change, melting ice caps, rising sea levels, drought, deadly storms, and our government's pledge to reduce 25% of carbon emissions in 10 years. As Matt and I wrapped up our time in Southern Oregon, we headed back south to debrief with Ryan and his wife Deb. The resounding question we kept asking was, for what? Why are we building Oregon's biggest greenhouse gas polluter? Why are we putting some of the most ecologically diverse and precious land at risk? Why are we seizing private land against owners' will? And why are we supporting an increase in domestic gas price? Beyond 150 jobs and a tax revenue for Coos County, there is no public benefit to this project. Pipelines are substantial long-term investments, locking stakeholders into at minimum 20-year contracts. So regardless of whether the economics change, the technology becomes antiquated, or governments take aggressive action to combat global warming, Coos Bay, Southern Oregon, and the end users are locked into fossil fuels. Despite the branding and big dollars, natural gas is still a fossil fuel. It still contributes greatly to the pollution of our atmosphere, in some ways worse than coal and oil. Now, it's important to keep in mind I'm still a recovering apathetic millennial. I'm not cured. But one thing I've learned through this process is that it's time we spoke up. This film has been my way of engaging. For others, it'll be something completely different. The solutions aren't all there, and I'm cynical towards most of them, but I do know that Jordan Cove is wrong. Jobs and economic development are not wrong, but Jordan Cove is wrong. There's an injustice to American citizens like Stacy running dead, but there's also an injustice to me, to my generation, to the generations after mine. I have a choice now to remain complacent, or I have a choice to engage. What are you going to do?
That's called 36 Inches Movie, and it's because the pipeline itself is 36 inches. The pipe itself is, the diameter is 36 inches, so that's the nature of that. What did you think of that?
Excellent. Is that on YouTube by chance?
It is.
Oh, good.
And it has its own site, 36 Inches Movie, that's what it's called. So a lot of this information went by so quickly that I'm just going to go back and highlight a couple things. And one of the things that, I hope you heard, and perhaps you've heard from politicians if you've been going to town halls, is that LNG is a bridge fuel. It's the new clean fossil fuel. And because of the leakage, and if you the pipes in your home, you have leaks. That happens. The issue with LNG is that because of its leaking and because it is 86 times more efficient than CO2 at trapping the carbon, it's as bad as coal, is what the research is now showing. So it's not a bridge fuel. It's another fossil fuel that should be left in the ground. So this is a map of the beginning of the pipeline. This is 232 miles of 36-inch pipe, starting in Malin, which is south of Klamath Falls, coming through our southern part of the state all the way to Coos Bay. It will go through 400 rivers and streams, including the Rogue, the Coquille, the Klamath, the Coos. Some streams will be crossed numerous times. And not just crossed, blasted under.
Right. In order to put this 36-inch pipe, they have to blow up a big hole right through the river. So in terms of salmon-producing streams, it's going to create all kinds of sediment. It damages the banks of the river. I mean, the company always says that they're going to mitigate things to make things fine. But you take a bulldozer and blow a big hole in a river, and it's never going to be the way it was. It's different. So that's one big concern. So some of you who've been here for a while may know that originally this was an import LNG pipeline proposal back in 2005. They did receive the go-ahead from all the federal regulatory agencies by 2009. And then all of a sudden, because of fracking and because of that difference between LNG being $2 here and $14 in Asia, suddenly this was to become an export pipeline. So none of the gas will remain in this country. It's all to go overseas for the profits of the Canadian company, Verizon, and Williams, which is a Oklahoma pipeline company. So it's not even, I mean, we need to leave them in the ground and stop burning fossil fuels, but this isn't even for domestic use. It's for profits. It's for the private profits of the company and the stockholders. So it is a Canadian company, and our dear Congress some years ago passed a bill that said energy projects can take land for eminent domain, whether they're import or export. So these people are going to lose their land, and it's a 100-foot clear cut. The company then, they say it's a right-of-way, but the farmer, you can't plant things on that land. It's a no-grow zone. They come through periodically and mow down and cut down and remove anything that's growing in that 100-foot swath. And then, of course, you have a 36-inch pipe buried in your yard, next to your house, perhaps.
5 feet deep, so you can see it's 3 feet wide, so there's 2 feet above it to the surface of your ground, which of course never moves, never gets cracked, never disturbed or anything, especially the mountains. This is a very mountainous terrain that they're planning.
And there are actually already some smaller pipelines in this part of our state, and the soil here moves. I mean, it's clay, there's slippage. There have been problems with those pipes becoming exposed. So Verizon is out of Alberta, Canada, and they are a energy company. And the Williams company is out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And you can Google it, but the fellow mentioned it in the film. This year alone, they have had 4 major explosions. One of the concerns of the people in Southern Oregon is that because this pipeline is going through rural areas, the company is allowed to use lower safety standards. So they get to use, because if there aren't 100 people per 10 miles, it's considered, rural. You're not going to blow up as many people as you would, I guess, if you were in Portland or the middle of Eugene. So they get to use a thinner pipe. They get to not bury it as deep, and they don't have to check all the welds. They only have to spot check some of the welds. So if you were a landowner, I can guess how you might feel about the fact that the safety standard is lower just because you live in the country. So gas is fracked. In the Rockies, it's also being fracked up in Canada. The wells are short-lived. That's why we have to have so many of them. They drill. They put explosives and all kinds of toxic chemicals, which we now know the process of fracking is contributing to earthquakes. And if you haven't seen Gasland, check it out, because people's tap water catches on fire when the fracking chemicals reach into the aquifer. And, you can't predict, you can't drill a hole and put chemicals in it and expect them to stay in that place. The aquifer moves, the water moves. So it's bad for the people who are being in the fracking areas, and it's bad for the people who are in the areas that are being transported, having the gas transported. So the gas is fracked, it'll come through the pipeline, and then when it gets to Coos Bay, this liquefaction plant, they have to actually lower the temperature of the gas to minus 265 degrees. And that takes a lot of energy. And they have to do that because it's only cost effective to put this methane onto the vessels to transport it if it's condensed. So when they turn it into a liquid, it's something like it condenses at 6,000 times its normal, normal volume. So a huge liquefaction plant. And they're going to dredge 26 football field stadiums worth of dredge out of Coos Bay in order to allow 2 of these tankers to come from Asia and be parked there at the same time. Patty and I, and part of what's great about activism is you get to start going to all these meetings and you get to hear things like, it's okay, this pipeline project will actually affect 32 endangered species. They're going to cut down standing trees that have spotted owls and marbled murrelets, and they say they can mitigate it by picking a piece of land over there that the birds can just go and, have their life there. Well, one of the realities is that now those mitigation areas have burned down because of the fires. So, that plan and all those endangered species that will be affected, the mitigation doesn't really work. It's kind of a sleight of hand. It sounds really good to say you can ruin something over here and you'll preserve something over there, but the truth is it doesn't really work that way. Okay, so actually there are 2 pipelines. I don't know if you know this. We're really focused on the southern one, but I'll just show you. There's another pipeline being proposed. Again, it's a Canadian company. I used to think the Canadians were better than us, but now I'm starting to change my mind. This one is called Oregon LNG, and it's up out of Warrington. And it is only an 80-mile pipeline. But I think we're beginning to think that pipeline up north is going to go down because of all 4 county commissioners have now come out against it, and the people from Vancouver and Portland area have really descended to stop this project. So we've heard some rumors that one will go down, which only makes the southern one even a bigger commitment. They're going to be less willing to let that one go. So this is just a picture of fracking. You can see the process. It's actually, they put an explosive on the end of the drill bit. It blows up the rock. Then they shoot all these chemicals. The chemicals cause the gas to come back up through the hole that they've drilled, and that's when they capture it. It's also every wellhead leaks. And we just recently saw a study that I think they thought they leaked like 3%. Well, now it's, some of them leak 15%, and they don't stop leaking even when they cap them. So that's part of the not good thing. Here's kind of an overview. You can see, and many people have expressed concern about the fact that these 14-story tanks, 2 of them that are going to hold all this gas, are actually very near the airport. And should a plane ever have a problem and hit one of those, the blast zone is 3 miles. So everyone within 3 miles will most likely not be with us anymore. So you can imagine that some people in Coos Bay are very, very concerned. Tons of impacts, and I won't, in the interest of time, go through all of them. But the Oregon State University geology and seismology professors have written a letter to our Federal Energy Regulatory Commission saying it's nuts to put this kind of facility in an earthquake tsunami zone on a sand spit. They're saying there's an 80% likelihood that the big one that's overdue for the coast in Oregon will occur during the life of this project. So it's putting people at terrible risk, and it's also further damaging our lovely home that we need to live in. So there are lots of reasons to hate this project. There was a mention of the jobs, and that's really what the upside, right, is supposedly, is that all these jobs. Well, we know that the construction jobs of building the pipe will last about 18 months. And it's also a curious thing, if this is going to be such a job boon for Coos Bay and for Oregon, why is the company putting in a 2,000-man camp in North Bend in order to have places for the workers to stay, and it's because they're bringing their own people from Oklahoma or wherever they already have people employed to come and work on this. So yes, there will be a handful of jobs, but the promises being made to the community, it's not going to be there. It's 150 jobs permanently. Takes about 4 people to manage the pipeline. The other jobs are all at the liquefaction plant. And they have just, I think, received their siting for that 2,000 man camp. There was quite a lot of people in North Bend didn't want that in their neighborhood, but the companies have a way of succeeding at getting what they want. So there are actually 28 fossil fuel projects planned for the Pacific Northwest. So these are just the 2 that are hitting Oregon. But Washington is fighting these same issues, British Columbia. There's a mad scramble to make money off of fossil fuels. And the fracking has just really opened the door in a way that I think we never really knew was going to happen. So this is just kind of an overview of a sense of where all those projects are happening. Picture of a fracked landscape. You know, as people of faith, we know it's wrong to wreck the planet. And it's wrong to be making money wrecking the planet. And that's part of the big fight, is that there's so much money involved that the concerns for safety and well-being are really taking backseat to the whole issue. So where we are currently, last March, after the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference, which is a free thing that the University of Oregon Environmental Law School puts on. If you haven't gone, take a look, because it's an amazing opportunity to learn about a lot of issues. And so in March, there was that conference at the university, and we kind of put out the word saying, we should get together, we should work together to fight this thing. So a group of over 20 organizations, many of them Riverkeeper, Water Alliance, just grassroots environmental folks, have come together, and we are working together to defeat this project. Back in May, we got about 700 people to go up to Salem, and we let our governor, because she's actually the one person in our entire state who has the power to stop this thing. We let our governor and our elected officials know that we don't want this project. They tried to push this same project through California. They tried to push it through Washington, and both those states said no. Oregon actually has weaker environmental laws than those 2 states, and that's part of why they're here doing that now. So we went to Salem. We continue to organize Hike the Pipe, 232 miles of resistance. There are people right now hiking along the pipeline route in an attempt to get more word out, to get some attention, to help people understand what this means for our state. At the end of this Hike the Pipe, the end is the 26th of September, we're all going to gather in Coos Bay. And I would invite any of you who are interested to join us. There's going to be a flotilla, kayaks, canoes in the water welcoming the hikers, people on the bridge. We're going to have a rally, and we're going to make our voices known loud and clear that we do not think this is the right thing to be doing. We want the project stopped. So right now, we're waiting for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is actually there are 11 federal permitting agencies and about 8 state agencies. The most powerful state agency is the Coastal Wetland Management Zone regulatory rules. That is the only agency that's actually more powerful than the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's the only state agency that can trump them and tell them that it can't happen. So they have not come out with their information about whether or not they agree that this is a good project, but we know that the FERC is going to approve it, and that approval is going to come out September 30th. And then we have 60 days as Oregonians, or actually it affects, you don't have to be an Oregonian, it's a federal project, it affects everyone. We'll have 60 days to communicate with our elected officials about this project. So it's a real education. If you're at all bored in your life, let me tell you, there's nothing like going to these regulatory commissions. We actually found out at the one that we went to down in Roseburg that the corporations who are trying to get these projects permitted, they pay for permits, and that's how the FERC is funded. So the agency that is regulating them only is able to pay its bills and salaries if they get these permits. So there are lots of strange little conflicts going on. So I think I'll go ahead and end there, but we'll be happy to talk later. We have some information in the back. You're welcome to take one of the maps. There's an article about the earthquakes and some concerns about that. And then there's also some no LNG buttons.
And Jennifer brought in the article in yesterday's Register Guard that is from a very prominent activist who's a forest ecologist, Francis Etherington, in Roseburg, about the very subject. So it's so super timely. It talks about the fires in the mitigation forest where the marble murrelets were supposed to somehow move their nests. So she really hits all of the high points here. Eminent domain. We're really supporting Stacy McLaughlin, whose land you saw her standing at with that dog. She's the one who got us engaged in helping them in Southern Oregon. They don't have much activist help down there. So from Eugene down in the Willamette Valley, we're scooping up all of the activists, including the coastal activists down here, to show up in support of, making these projects known and then stopped.
And please take an LNG button if you like and wear it. People will say to you, "What's LNG?" And you can say, "It's methane," because that's what it is.
And we will,
Thank you.
If you want to sign up to go to Coos Bay on the 26th, we are hiring a bus in Eugene and going down all the way with our folks. You might not feel like you're a kayaktivist, but maybe you really are wanting to get in the water. How many of you saw the Seattle no-shell protest? And then after that, the Portland no-shell protest.
What day of the week is that?
That's a Saturday.
It's a Saturday.
The 26th is a Saturday, so it's going to be lots of fun.
Coos Bay at noon.
Do you want to take questions at the
Yeah,
later? Okay,
yeah.
that'd be great.
We will. If Deb and Patty, you'll stick around for a while? So after